The bus jolted to a stop on the edge of Harrow Creek, and I stepped out into air thick with dust and the faint tang of cut hay. Gravel crunched under my boots as I hauled my bag down the empty road, the kind that stretched too far and held too many secrets. Eyes from porches followed me, quiet, measuring, like they already knew I'd come to stir things up. Starting over here felt like swallowing stones. My old life in the city had crumbled under family fights and questions I couldn't answer. So I needed this small town to be a reset, a place to breathe without the weight. But the first real breath caught when I passed the high school field. Bodies slammed together in the late afternoon sun, grunts echoing off the chain link fence. Wrestling practice. And there she was, the captain, pinning her opponent with a focus that made the air hum. Her name was Riley, I learned later. Tall, muscled, with dark hair pulled back tight, and eyes that locked on like she was reading your next move before you made it. She flipped the guy clean over, stood, and wiped sweat from her brow. Our eyes met for a split second across the fence. My chest tightened. I looked away, but the pull had already started. High school in Harrow Creek settled into me like dust on skin, persistent, impossible to shake. The building was old brick, hallways narrow and echoing with the shuffle of boots and low voices. Mornings started with assembly prayers in the gym, everyone standing shoulder to shoulder, the pastor's words hanging heavy about family values and straight paths. I kept my head down, blending into the crowd of kids from farms and trailers, their lives wrapped around church suppers and Friday games. My aunt's place was on the outskirts, a sagging porch and fields that stretched to nothing. And she expected me to help with chores after school, mucking stalls, hauling feed. It grounded me, that labor. But it also left too much time for my mind to wander. The town pressed in close, conservative edges sharp as barbed wire. Sunday services filled the pews, sermons on temptation and purity that made my skin crawl. Girls giggled about boys in clusters by lockers, their laughter light but laced with expectation. I watched from the edges, feeling the ache of what I couldn't say. My desires had always been quiet things, buried under layers of denial. Glances at women's hands in magazines, the way my pulse jumped at a soft voice in a crowd. Here they surfaced in stolen moments. The curve of a girl's neck in class, the strength in Riley's stride as she passed in the hall. But I pushed them down. Visibility wasn't safe. One wrong look, and the whispers could turn to shouts. Routines built slowly. English class with Mrs. Hale, where we'd parse poems about lost love, my pen scratching notes while my thoughts drifted. Lunch in the courtyard, picking at sandwiches alone until a girl named Tessa nodded me over to her table. Safe. Surface talk about homework and the weather. Afternoons blurred into wrestling meets I'd catch glimpses of from the bleachers, drawn by the raw energy, the bodies moving with purpose. Riley was always at the center, her takedowns precise, her voice calling out drills with a command that made others straighten. I told myself it was just curiosity, the way her muscles shifted under her singlet. But it stirred something deeper, a hunger I hadn't named. The first real interaction came at the fall fair, the town's big event. Booths strung with lights, hay bales for seats, the smell of fried dough and wood smoke. I wandered the edges, avoiding the crowds, when the wrestling team demo started, on a makeshift mat in the square. Kids cheered as pairs grappled, Riley demonstrating holds with effortless control. I hung back by the fence, but Tessa dragged me closer. "Come on, it's fun," she said. Riley's eyes found mine again, that intensity pulling like a current. During a break, chaos erupted. A kid tripped into the ring, mats shifting, bodies tumbling in the scramble. I lunged to steady a falling girl, my hand catching Riley's arm instead. She spun, our faces inches apart, breath hot and quick. Time slowed. Her lips brushed mine, not a kiss, not planned, just the accident of momentum and sweat-slick skin. But it lingered, soft and electric, before we pulled back. The crowd laughed it off as a fumble, but her eyes held mine a beat too long, wide with something unspoken. Heat flooded my face. I muttered an apology and backed away, heart thudding like a pinned opponent's struggle. The air shifts after that touch, pulling me deeper into her world. Hallways became minefields after the fair. I'd spot Riley from the corner of my eye, her broad shoulders cutting through the crowd like a plow through dry earth. She'd pause at her locker, but her gaze would linger, sharp, unflinching, pinning me in place even as I hurried past. It wasn't anger in those looks, more like a question, heavy with what our lips had brushed against. My stomach twisted each time, a mix of shame and that forbidden spark. I clutched my books tighter, boots echoing too loud on the linoleum, pretending not to feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I started avoiding the gym wing altogether. The wrestling room's door stayed propped open most afternoons, spilling out the thud of bodies hitting mats and Riley's voice barking commands. I'd take the long way around, through the back stairwell that smelled of damp concrete and forgotten lunches, heart pounding like I'd run a mile. Fear gnawed at me. What if she called me out? What if someone pieced together that accidental press of mouths and turned it into something ugly? The town was too small for secrets. One slip and my aunt's quiet life could shatter, her already strained patience with my city troubles snapping like a worn rope. So I stayed clear, burying myself in chores at home, the repetitive scrape of a shovel against stall floors a dull rhythm to drown out the memory of her breath on my skin. But whispers have a way of finding you in places like Harrow Creek. They started soft, like wind through fence wire. Girls in the bathroom murmuring about the fair fumble. Boys snickering in the parking lot about Riley getting distracted. Tessa pulled me aside one lunch, her eyes wide under the brim of her hat. "Heard you two got tangled up good," she said, half laughing. But there was an edge to it, a probe for truth. I shrugged it off, said it was nothing, just a trip. But the talk spread, twisting the accident into something charged, like static before a storm. Church youth group that Wednesday, the pastor's sermon on guarding your heart felt aimed right at me, his words landing like stones in still water. I sat in the back pew, fingers digging into the wood, wondering if Riley heard the same warning. We shared history class, third period. Desks jammed close in the stuffy room. Mrs. Hale droned on about the Dust Bowl, farmers fighting barren land, but I barely heard. Riley sat 2 rows over, her pen tapping a steady beat against her notebook. One day, she dropped it, rolled right under my chair. I froze, then bent to pick it up, our hands brushing as I handed it back. Her fingers were calloused, warm from gripping mats, and she held on a second too long. "Thanks," she muttered, voice low, but her eyes searched mine, revealing a crack in that captain's armor, uncertainty flickering like a shadow across her face. I nodded, throat dry, and turned back to the board, but the air between us thickened, charged with what neither could name. Vulnerability hung there, raw as an open wound. The first real words came after school, by the bike racks. I was unlocking my chain when she appeared, backpack slung over one shoulder, sweat still drying on her neck from practice. "Hey," she said, casual but not, leaning against the railing. The sun slanted low, casting her in gold, muscles taut under her shirt. "About the fair, you okay?" I mumbled something about it being an accident, no big deal, but she stepped closer, voice dropping. Felt like more than that to me. Subtext laced every word, the way her gaze dropped to my lips, the unspoken pull of what we'd stirred. My pulse hammered, body betraying me with a flush I couldn't hide. I backed away, bike wobbling as I pedaled off, but her words clung like burrs. But avoidance only made the pull stronger, leading to an unavoidable confrontation. Practice ended late that Friday, the sun dipping low behind the bleachers, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I lingered by my bike, pretending to adjust the chain, but really waiting for the team to clear out. The gym doors banged open, voices spilling like gravel under tires. Riley emerged last, towel around her neck, hair damp and clinging to her temples. She spotted me immediately, that captain stride eating up the distance. No escape now. My hands tightened on the handlebars, knuckles whitening like fence posts in frost. She stopped a foot away, close enough I could smell the clean sweat on her skin, mixed with the faint rubber of mats. "We need to talk," she said, voice steady but edged, like a rope pulled taut. I glanced around, the lot emptying, a few stragglers heading to trucks, but her eyes held mine, unflinching. "Not here," I muttered. But she shook her head, stepping closer until the air between us thickened, heavy as humid night. "You've been dodging me all week. That kiss at the fair, it wasn't nothing. You know it." Her words landed soft but firm, stirring the dust at our feet. I swallowed, throat dry as cracked earth. "It was an accident. Chaos, people falling everywhere. I didn't mean..." But she cut me off, hand reaching out to grip my arm, her fingers strong from hours of grappling, calluses rough against my sleeve. The touch sent a jolt through me, warm and unwelcome, pooling low in my gut. "Accident or not, you took something from me that day." Her voice dropped, eyes searching mine with a rawness that cracked her tough shell. "My heart. You stole it, right there in that press of bodies. I can't stop thinking about your lips, the way you looked at me after. It's like you claimed it, without asking." The claim unfolded slow, her words wrapping around me like vines on a sagging fence. She leaned in, breath warm on my cheek, vulnerability spilling out in the quiet lot. "I've pinned guys twice my size, led this team through losses that broke us. But you, one brush and I'm off balance. You own it now. My thoughts, the way my chest tightens when I see you in the hall. What are you going to do with it?" Her gaze didn't waver, intense as a storm building over the fields, and I felt exposed, stripped bare under that stare. Attraction twisted inside me, sharp and insistent, my body leaning toward her despite the warning bells. Her strength drew me, the curve of her shoulders, the quiet power in her stance. But denial surged up, hot and defensive. "I didn't steal anything. It was a mistake. I can't feel that way." My voice cracked, weak as a sapling in wind, but my pulse betrayed me, thudding loud in my ears. She released my arm, but the heat lingered, a brand on my skin. "Deny it if you want, but I see it in you too, the way you watch." Riley stepped back, but her presence filled the space, pulling at me like gravity on a downhill slope. I wanted to run, to pedal hard back to my aunt's porch and bury it all under chores. The endless sweep of broom against wood floors, the haul of water buckets that left my arms aching and my mind blank. But her words rooted me, forcing the truth up through the soil of my fears. Family loomed large in Harrow Creek, a weight heavier than harvest loads. My aunt, with her Bible on the kitchen table and eyes that miss nothing, had taken me in after the city fallout. My parents' arguments over my phases, the unspoken accusations that hung like smoke. She'd nod at church, her hand firm on my shoulder during prayers about straying sheep. But I saw the strain, the way her lips thinned when talk turned to those city influences. And the church itself, that white steeple dominating the town square, preached fire for sins of the flesh, especially the unspoken ones. Sermons painted desire as a trap, pulling souls into darkness. And the congregation echoed it. Women in floral dresses whispering judgments over coffee after service, men grunting agreement about keeping families pure. Riley's world mirrored mine. Her dad the deacon, her mom organizing youth retreats, the wrestling team a shield of normalcy in their eyes. One wrong step, and it all crumbled. Scholarships lost, families torn. The town turning its back, like a door slammed in winter wind. Visibility terrified me, a risk sharper than barbed wire fences lining the roads. In this small place, secrets didn't stay buried. They surfaced like weeds after rain, choking everything. I'd seen it before. A girl from last year's graduating class whispers about her friend from out of town, leading to cold shoulders, her family shipping her off to relatives. The isolation gnawed, a constant pressure on my chest, making every glance feel like a spotlight. What if Riley's claim spread? What if my hidden wants, the ache for her touch, the dreams that woke me sweating, became public? I'd lose the fragile peace here, the routines that kept me steady. But denying it meant denying the pull, the way her presence made the world feel less empty, her strength a mirror to my own buried resilience. Attraction warred with fear, my body humming with what my mind screamed to ignore. Her words hung heavy, forcing me to face what I'd ignited. Saturday morning, I pushed open the door to the Harrow Diner, bell jingling like a warning. The place smelled of grease and strong coffee, booths worn smooth from years of locals leaning in close over plates of eggs and hash. Riley was already there, in the corner by the window, her fingers drumming the Formica top. She'd texted me late last night, simple words. "Meet me. We need to fix this." My stomach nodded as I slid into the seat across from her, the vinyl creaking under me. She looked up, eyes steady, no trace of the vulnerability from the parking lot. Just that quiet strength, like a fence post holding against wind. I wrapped my hands around the mug the waitress slid over, heat seeping into my palms. "Look, Riley, about what you said, it was an accident. The kiss, your heart, none of it was real. We got caught in the moment, that's all." My voice came out rushed, words tumbling like loose gravel. She didn't flinch, just stirred her coffee, spoon clinking soft against the porcelain. Accident or not, it woke something up. You can't just say it away. Her gaze pinned me, warm but insistent, pulling at the edges of my denial. I shifted, boots scraping the floor. Tried to explain the town's eyes, the church walls closing in, how visibility could bury us both. But she leaned forward, voice low. "I'm not asking for the world, just honesty. Did it mean nothing to you?" The question hung, thick as diner steam. I mumbled about confusion, about needing space, but her nod was slow, resigned. We parted with awkward waves, the bell mocking me on the way out. Clarification? It only muddied the water more. Back at my aunt's, chores waited, like always. Endless, backbreaking. I grabbed the pitchfork, drove it into the stall's straw, the tines biting deep. Each thrust mirrored the strain inside me, muscles burning as I heaved piles into the wheelbarrow, sweat trickling down my spine like unspoken regrets. Emotional work felt the same, digging up the mess of feelings I'd buried, only to find more layers underneath, roots tangled and stubborn. Riley's claim lodged in my chest, heavy as a full load, making every breath a labor. I dumped the straw, wiped my brow, but the weight didn't lift. It shifted, settled deeper, the way hay dust clung to everything no matter how you swept. By evening, my arms ached, a dull throb that echoed the pull toward her. The resilience in her stance at the diner, unyielding as the barn's old beams. She didn't break under pressure. She pushed back, drew you in with that quiet force. I found myself wondering how she mucked through her own storms, leading a team that demanded everything while hiding her own cracks. Her resilience hooked me slow, like a line cast into still water. Monday in the hall, she passed with a nod, no lingering gaze, but it landed, solid, a reminder of her steadiness. I caught myself watching her at lunch from across the courtyard, the way she joked with teammates, her laugh cutting through the chatter, deep, unguarded. It stirred envy, then admiration, the kind that warmed low in my belly. After class, Tessa mentioned the team's fundraiser, Car Wash, Riley organizing it all with clipped commands and steady hands. I volunteered, told myself it was for extra credit, but really it was her pull, that captain's gravity making avoidance impossible. We scrubbed trucks side by side, water splashing cold on my jeans, her arm brushing mine as she reached for a sponge. "You're good at this," she said, simple, but her eyes held thanks, a crack in the armor that made my pulse jump. Distance? It crumbled under those small draws, her strength a magnet I couldn't outrun. Trying to pull back only twisted the rope tighter. I skipped history the next day, feigned a stomachache, holed up in the library with dusty books on local history, farming logs, faded photos of harvests that spoke of endurance. But absence bred tension, whispers reaching me through Tessa. Riley asking after me, her voice casual but edged. By afternoon, the strain built, a coil in my gut, every skipped glance amplifying the what-ifs. I showed up to the car wash late, suds already drying on the last truck. Riley handed me a rag without a word, our fingers grazing, brief, electric. "Glad you made it," she murmured, and the failed distance hung between us, charging the air like before a rain. The school project sealed it, history fair looming with its dioramas and timelines. We got paired, fate or Mrs. Hale's sly grin, on the town's founding, pioneers wrestling land from wilderness. In the empty classroom after hours, desks pushed aside, we worked side by side, glue pot steaming faintly. Her knee bumped mine under the table, accidental at first, then lingering as we leaned over the cardboard model. I felt the heat of her thigh through denim, steady pressure that made my breath hitch. "Pass the paint," she said, voice even, but her hand covered mine on the brush, guiding a stroke, subtle, deliberate. Skin on skin, calluses rough against my knuckles, sending sparks up my arm. I didn't pull away. Couldn't. The touch spoke louder than words, vulnerability threading through the quiet, our buried desires brushing close as the project pieces. Tension coiled, unspoken, as we packed up, her shoulder grazing mine at the door. Each step closer unearthed more buried feelings. But the town watched. The night air hung cool and still that Thursday, stars pricking the black sky like scattered nails over the ridge. I'd texted Riley after the project, fingers hesitant on the screen. "Meet me at the old water tower?" No crowds, just gravel road and quiet. She showed up on foot, sneakers quiet on the dirt path, her silhouette cutting sharp against the faint moon. We climbed the ladder slow, rungs cold under palms, until we sat on the platform, legs dangling over the edge. The town sprawled below, lights sparse as fireflies in jars. Silence settled first, thick but not empty, the kind that invites words if you let it. She leaned back on her elbows, breath visible in the chill. "Why here?" she asked, voice low, carrying across the metal. I shrugged, pulled my knees up. Needed space, away from eyes. We talked then, stories spilling like water from a cracked bucket. Mine first, city life that choked me, parents' fights over who I was becoming, the pull to something they couldn't name. Landing in Harrow Creek felt like exile, Aunt's farm a cage of routines, church a weekly reminder to hide. Isolation clawed deep in places like this, where girls learned early to bury wants under layers of good Christian smiles. Sundays dragged with hymns about straight and narrow, but my narrow path twisted inward, toward glances I stole at women's forms in the fields, the ache of unspoken hunger. Riley listened, head tilted, no interruption, just nods that said she knew the weight. Her turn came slow, words measured like steps on uneven ground. Captain or not, she carried the same load. Dad's deacon robes hanging in the closet like judgments. Mom's youth group pushing purity rings and boy-crazy talks. Wrestling was her outlet, body slamming doubts on the mat. But off it, the loneliness bit harder. "Pinned every opponent this season, but can't pin down what I feel," she said, gaze on the horizon. Conservative walls pressed in, town so tight-knit it strangled breath. Whispers about sinners echoing from pulpits, families fracturing over rumors. She'd watched teammates pair off with boys, envied the ease. But her eyes always wandered to softer lines, stronger silences. Isolation mirrored mine, two shadows in the same valley. Desires hidden like roots under frost-hard soil. As she spoke, my body shifted, betraying me in the dark. Her arm brushed mine when she gestured, skin warm through thin sleeves, sending a shiver that had nothing to do with cold. Heat pooled low, thighs pressing together against the urge, pulse thudding steady as a distant engine. I wanted to lean in, trace the line of her jaw with fingers, feel the give of her under my touch. But fear locked me still, breath shallow, the virile night amplifying every rustle, every unspoken want. Stars wheeled overhead, indifferent, while my skin hummed, desire rising like sap in spring, slow, insistent, impossible to prune back. She noticed, I think, the way my hands clenched on the platform edge, knuckles pale. Her gaze turned to me then, unflinching, cutting through the night like a beam from the tower below. No pity, just challenge. Eyes holding mine, daring the fears to surface. "You feel it too," she said. Not question, statement. Voice rough as gravel. It pierced the walls I'd built, the conservative chains rattling loose. Fears of exposure, of aunt's disappointed eyes or church doors slamming shut, loomed large. But her stare stripped them bare, made them feel small against the pull between us. Vulnerability cracked open, mine and hers, in that shared quiet. I nodded, throat tight, the admission heavy as harvested grain. She didn't push, just let the gaze linger, a bridge over the chasm of our hidden lives. Friday brought the team crisis. Key wrestlers sidelined with a sprain, state qualifiers looming like storm clouds. Practice ran ragged, shouts echoing from the gym as Riley paced the mats, frustration etching lines on her face. I lingered outside, drawn by the pull, then slipped in with water bottles from the vending machine. "Thought you could use these," I said, handing them over, voices hushed amid the chaos. Her hand closed over mine, brief squeeze, thanks unspoken, but clear in the softening of her shoulders. Teammates grabbed drinks, grumbled about the setback, but Riley met my eyes over the cluster. Gratitude there, steady as an anchor. Small act, but it rooted me deeper. Support weaving through the tension like fence wire, mending a gap. Trust built slowly, layer by layer, like sediment in creek beds. Yet external pressures began to crack the foundation. Monday hit like a cold front rolling in, sharpening the air with whispers that cut deeper than wind through cracks in barn siding. School hallways buzzed louder than usual, heads turning as I passed, eyes flicking away too quick. Gossip had taken root over the weekend, spreading from the car wash suds to church potlucks and back. Tessa caught me at my locker first, her voice a hurried whisper amid the slam of doors. "People are talking about you and Riley. The fair kiss, the way you two keep ending up together. It's not just jokes anymore." Her words landed heavy, stirring the dust of rumors I'd hoped to outrun. By lunch, the courtyard hummed with it. Boys elbowing each other by the bleachers, girls clustered under oaks murmuring about that new girl getting too close to the captain. The town fed on scraps like this, conservative roots twisting stories into warnings, painting us as temptations to be stamped out before they bloomed. Community eyes pressed in harder, the smallness of Harrow Creek turning every glance into a judgment. After school, I biked past the general store, where old men on the porch nodded slow, their gazes lingering like they knew more than they let on. Church ladies who'd smiled at me Sunday now averted eyes, Bibles clutched tighter, as if my presence dirtied the pages. The wrestling team's next meet loomed, posters plastered on every pole, but the hype carried an undercurrent. Riley's dad, the deacon, fielding questions at service about his daughter's distractions. Isolation deepened, the walls of secrecy closing like a stall door in a storm, trapping breaths that came too shallow. I pedaled faster, gravel spitting under tires, but the weight followed, a shadow lengthening with the sun. Home brought its own scrutiny. My aunt's kitchen a minefield of unspoken probes. She stood at the sink that evening, hands buried in soapy dishwater, the clink of plates sharp against the quiet. "Heard some talk at the co-op today," she said, not looking up. Voice even, but edged like a well-worn knife. "About you and that wrestling girl. Folks saying things that don't sit right with our ways." Her shoulders tensed, the same strain I'd seen since I arrived. Bible study circles whispering about city girls bringing trouble, her patience fraying under the load of keeping up appearances. I froze by the table, peeling an apple too hard, skin tearing in ragged strips. "It's nothing, Aunt May. Just friends helping with projects." But her eyes met mine then, sharp as fence wire, searching for lies. "This town's got rules, girl. Church teaches us to guard against what pulls us off path. Don't make me regret taking you in." The words hung, heavy as wet laundry on the line, family ties knotting tighter around my throat. Scrutiny burned, forcing me to swallow the truth, desires curling inward like smoke up a chimney. Riley's vulnerability cracked open that Wednesday, in the empty chem lab after hours. I'd slipped in to grab forgotten notes, but she was there, slumped to the stool, head in hands, the fluorescent hum the only sound. Bruises bloomed on her arms from practice, purple shadows under eyes that looked hollow. "Rough day?" I asked, voice soft, closing the door behind me. She looked up, that captain's mask slipping, revealing the raw edges beneath. Dad cornered me after youth group, heard the gossip, said if I don't watch it I'll lose everything. Team, college, family. Her voice broke, fingers tracing a scar on her knuckle, old from some forgotten fall. In that private space, walls lined with beakers and charts, she let it spill. The fear of disappointing the deacon's daughter role. The ache of hiding who she wanted under layers of takedowns and team cheers. One slip, and they see me. Really see me. With you. Tears welled but didn't fall, her jaw set tight. But the exposure hit me hard, mirroring my own fractures. I reached out, hand on her shoulder, felt the tremor through her shirt, strength giving way to the weight she carried alone. Pulling back seemed the only way to breathe after that. I skipped the next practice glimpse, buried myself in farm work, hauling hay bales that left splinters in my palms and sweat soaking my back. But the attempt ignited Thursday in the hall. Riley waiting by my locker, arms crossed, eyes storm dark. "You're avoiding me again. After everything?" Her voice rose, drawing stares from passing kids, the argument spilling hot and unchecked. "I thought we were past this. That night at the tower meant something." I snapped back, words tumbling defensive, about the gossip, Aunt's warnings, how we couldn't afford the fallout. "It's too much, Riley. The town's closing in. We have to stop." But she stepped closer, breath quick, frustration etching her face. "Stop? You think denying it fixes anything? It just makes the want sharper." Voices echoed around us, the heat of the fight drawing a small crowd, whispers amplifying the chaos. I stormed off, heart pounding, but the pull only tightened, unresolved. We met hidden that night, in the abandoned barn on the edge of town. Sagging roof, stalls empty and smelling of old hay and rust. Moonlight slanted through gaps in the boards, casting bars across the dirt floor. She waited in the shadows, pacing like a caged animal, and I slipped in quiet, door creaking shut behind me. "Why here?" I asked, but she just pulled me into the dim corner, hands on my arms, grip firm but trembling. The argument reignited soft at first. Accusations of running, pleas for space, but it dissolved into silence, our breaths sinking in the close air. Vulnerability lingered from the lab, her eyes searching mine, the intimacy we'd built now laced with desperation. No resolution, just the heat of proximity, bodies inches apart in the dark. The fight clarified nothing, only heightened the intimacy we couldn't escape. The regional wrestling tournament hit that Saturday, gym packed tight with Harrow Creek's pride and the rival town's stares. Banners hung limp from rafters, the air thick with sweat, and the sharp squeak of sneakers on polished floors. I hadn't planned to go, too raw after the barn. But Tessa cornered me Friday, her eyes pleading under the fluorescent lights. "Team needs support. Riley's counting on it." Guilt twisted in my gut, sharp as a thorn in boot leather. So I showed, slipping into the bleachers' back row, cap pulled low, the crowd's roar a buffer against the pull. But proximity forced itself, like wind shoving through open barn doors. Riley warmed up on the mats below, singlet hugging her form, muscles coiling as she stretched. Our eyes met once, brief but electric, her nod pulling me down despite the distance. The event demanded it, cheers rising with each match, the whole town woven into the stands, no hiding in shadows. She dominated early rounds, takedowns, clean and fierce, pinning opponents with that unflinching focus. But the semis dragged her against a girl from across the county, built like a fence post, unyielding. The whistle blew, and they circled, breaths heaving in the humid air. I gripped the bench edge, knuckles pale, body leaning forward without thought. Riley lunged, locked arms, but the rival countered, driving her to the mat. Grunts echoed, bodies straining, sweat gleaming under lights. She fought back, muscles taut as wire, but the hold held. The ref slapped the mat. Loss. The buzzer sounded and she rolled off, chest rising fast, face flushed with defeat. Teammates swarmed, but her eyes found mine in the crowd, raw and searching, like the fall had stripped more than points. Proximity burned. I wanted to drop down, bridge the gap, but the stands held me, public eyes everywhere. Friends dragged the revelation out after, in the parking lot chaos, trucks idling, exhaust mixing with the night's chill. Tessa and a couple teammates clustered by Riley's beat-up Ford, passing a thermos of hot chocolate, voices low over the defeat's sting. I hung at the edge, offering quiet congrats, but the talk turned personal, Tessa's arm around Riley's shoulders. "You okay, Cap? Looked like you were wrestling ghosts out there." Riley shrugged, but her gaze flicked to me, heavy. Then Tessa, half laughing to lighten the mood, spilled it accidental. "Ever since that fair mess with you two, she's been off. The kiss, the projects, it's like you're in her head." Words hung in the steam, unintended but out, the group falling silent. Eyes turned, questions forming in the dim lot lights. Riley stiffened, but didn't deny. Just met my stare, the accidental truth cracking the air like frost on a windshield. Friends shifted, awkward laughs masking the shift, but the revelation landed, no taking it back. Whispers would spread from here, ceding more ground for the town's judgment. Her heart laid bare then, emotional floodgates cracking under the loss and the slip. She pulled me aside, behind the gym's brick wall, away from the cluster, but not far enough, voices still carrying from the lot. "Tessa didn't mean it," she started, voice rough, arms crossed tight over her chest. But the defeat etched her face, eyes red-rimmed, the captain's armor shattered. But she's right. That kiss stole more than a moment. It's my whole rhythm now, you and my thoughts, every pin attempt feeling like fighting this pull. Words tumbled, vulnerable as exposed roots after a rain, her breath visible in the cold. I lead them out there, take the hits, but with you, it's like you've got my heart in a hold I can't break. The way you watch, the touches that linger, it's all I want. But this town, my family, it could end me. Tears tracked her cheek, unashamed, her hand reaching for mine, fingers intertwining rough and desperate. Emotional bareness hit hard, mirroring the mat's unforgiving surface, her strength giving way to the ache of wanting me openly, risks be damned. I squeezed back, throat tight, the intimacy raw in that shadowed corner. My own truths grappled up then, churning like mud in a creek bed after storm. Her confession pried at the walls, forcing hidden desires to surface. The ache I'd buried under chores and denials, the dreams of her body against mine, soft and strong in the dark. Grappling meant facing it. The fear of Aunt's rejection, Church's fire, but also the deeper terror of denying what felt true. Her heart in my hands, a weight I craved. Body betrayed again, heat rising despite the chill, pulse thudding low as her thumb traced my palm. Truth's ward, safety in silence versus the pull of her gaze. The way she made vulnerability feel like power. Physical tension peaked there, without release, her body inches from mine against the cool brick. She leaned in, breath warm on my neck, hand sliding up my arm, calluses dragging slow. My back pressed the wall, heart slamming like a body to mat, lips parting on a silent gasp. Her mouth hovered near, the almost kiss electric, air charged with want. But headlights swept the lot, voices calling her name, teammates pulling her back. We broke apart, breaths ragged, tension coiling tighter, unresolved, bodies humming with the nearness denied. That night changed the rhythm, pushing us toward a breaking point. Sunday service dragged that morning, the church steeple piercing the gray sky like a warning spike. Pews creaked under the weight of the congregation, air thick with hymnals and the faint polish of old wood. I sat rigid beside my aunt, her hand firm on my knee during the sermon, Pastor Hale thundering about moral decay, eyes sweeping the room as if spotting sinners in the shadows. Whispers from the week had seeped in, turning heads my way, the deacon's nod to Riley's family carrying extra weight. After the amen, the confrontation brewed in the fellowship hall, coffee urns steaming amid folding tables. Riley's dad cornered me by the snack line, his face stern under wire-rimmed glasses, voice low but cutting. Heard talk about you and my daughter. This town's built on foundations. Family, faith, the right ways. You stirring things up? His words landed like hail on tin roof. Community attitudes bared raw, the conservative grip tightening like roots choking a fence line. Women nearby paused, cups hovering, their gazes pricking my skin. I met his stare, throat dry. Just friends, sir, nothing more. But the lie tasted like dust, his grunt dismissing me as he turned away, the hall closing in with judgments unspoken but clear. Outside, the parking lot baked under clearing sun, but the pressure followed, a storm cloud trailing. Monday blurred into confrontation's echo, school hallways humming with sidelong looks that felt like barbs. Tessa pulled me aside at lunch, her face pale against the courtyard brick. Coach heard the tournament talk, pulled Riley in, warned her about distractions, implied you. Community walls pressed harder, the wrestling team's unity fracturing under gossip's weight, state finals a looming test of more than pins. I spotted Riley in the gym doorway after, her posture slumped against the frame, singlet discarded for street clothes. We walked the backfield together, grass whispering under boots, the air sharp with cut hay. Dad laid into me last night, she said, kicking a clod of dirt. Said you're a risk, pulling me from the path. The whole town's watching, church to bleachers. Her voice cracked, vulnerability threading through the captain's resolve. Attitudes closed ranks, families murmuring at diners, youth group leaders eyeing us like strays. I felt the squeeze. Desires we'd nurtured, now targets in the crosshairs. But stepping back meant surrender, and something shifted inside me, a root-breaking soil. I chose vulnerability that afternoon over the safety of silence. After classes, I texted her. Meet at the creek? No hiding, just the rush of water over stones. She arrived, boots muddy from practice, and we sat on the bank, willows drooping like tired arms. I've been running, I admitted, voice steady despite the churn. From the looks, the talks, aunt's questions. But denying us, it's killing me slower. Words spilled then, fears laid bare. The ache of hidden wants in this tight world. The pull toward her that felt like coming home after long fields. Safety whispered retreat, bury it under chores and nods. But vulnerability won, raw as peeled bark. Her hand found mine, fingers lacing rough and warm, the choice sealing us deeper. No more dodging, I'd face the town's glare. Her heart in my keeping, a risk worth the exposure. Tuesday brought the shared labor, mirroring the emotional dig we'd started. The team fundraiser needed hands, clearing the old lot behind the school for a bake sale setup, weeds choking gravel like unspoken regrets. We worked side by side, gloves on, pulling thistles that pricked through fabric. Each yank echoed the strain inside, roots stubborn as denials we'd clung to, dirt caking our knees as sweat beaded on brows. Riley drove a post-hole digger into the earth, muscles straining under her shirt, the thud rhythmic like heartbeats sinking. This is us, she grunted, wiping forehead with sleeve, digging through the mess to make space. I nodded, hauling a bucket of rocks, arms burning as emotional work surfaced. The vulnerability we'd chosen now physical, labor stripping layers until only truth remained. Her laugh cut short when a thorn caught my palm, blood welling quick. She bandaged it with her bandana, touch gentle amid the grit, the task binding us tighter, reflections of the honesty we'd clawed for. By evening, her demand came sharp, under the lot's fading light. We leaned on the tailgate of her truck, tools scattered, the air cooling with dusk. No more half-truths, she said, eyes locking mine, unflinching as ever. You chose this. Vulnerability. Us. So be honest. Do you want my heart, or is it just the thrill? Voice rough from the day's toil, but the question pierced, demanding the core. I swallowed, the creek's distant rush filling the pause. I want it. All of it. You, the risk, the quiet after. Honesty flooded out, no hedges, the conservative shadows shrinking against her gaze. She nodded, slow. The demand met like a pin held firm.
Friday's pep rally risked it all.
gym pulsing with cheers and stomps. I stood by the bleachers as Riley took the mic, team behind her, but her eyes found me in the crowd. Midway through the speech, she stepped down, crossed the floor amid whistles. Public. Bold. Hand outstretched, she pulled me up beside her, arm around my waist, brief but solid. The gesture hinting commitment without words. Gasps rippled, but she held steady. The risky move, a flag planted in hostile ground. Heat flushed my face, but I stood tall, the town's eyes on us, now allies in the glare. With everything exposed, resolution felt both inevitable and terrifying. The ridge trail wound quiet that Sunday evening, sun dipping low behind the canyon walls, painting the scrub in gold and shadow. We hiked it slow, Riley's boots scuffing dirt beside mine, the air crisp with pine and the faint earthiness of rain-soaked soil. No words at first, just the rhythm of steps, the crunch underfoot like settling bones after a long haul. We'd dodged the fallout from the rally, whispers in halls turning to stares, aunts' tight-lipped questions at dinner. But here, the landscape swallowed it all, vast and indifferent, giving space to breathe what we'd built. We stopped at the overlook where the town sprawled small below, lights flickering on like hesitant stars. Riley leaned against a boulder, arms loose at her sides, bruises from the week's practices fading to yellow on her knuckles. That gesture at the rally? It scared me too, she said, voice low, carrying over the wind's whisper through junipers. Her eyes met mine, unflinching as always, but softer now, the captain's edge dulled by the quiet. I nodded, settling beside her, the rock cool through my jeans. Meant we couldn't hide anymore. But facing it together, that's the steal we both did. Mutual acknowledgement came easy then, words weaving like fence mending after storm. Her heart in my hands, mine claimed in that first accidental brush, now held deliberate. No denials left. Overcoming the barriers felt like tilling fallow ground, slow but yielding. Monday, her dad waited by the gym, face stern but cracking when we approached, hand in hand. This town's changing, but family holds, he muttered, gaze dropping before a nod, grudging acceptance born of her resolve. Aunt May caught us in the kitchen that night, Bible open but forgotten, her sigh heavy as harvested wheat. If it's real, guard it close, but don't break us all. Church murmurs softened over weeks, youth group sidelong looks turning to uneasy tolerance, the conservative grip loosening like frost melt under spring sun. We navigated it side by side, Riley leading drills with me in the bleachers, no hiding, shared chores at the farm, my hands learning the swing of her work beside Aunt's watchful eyes. Barriers cracked, not shattered, but enough for light to seep through, our path carving wider in the narrow town. Emotional release washed over us that evening on the ridge. Sensory flood unbidden. Her hand found mine, fingers lacing rough and warm, calluses pressing like promises. I leaned in, lips meeting hers, intentional this time. Soft at first, then deeper, tasting salt of sweat and the wild tang of the canyon air. Bodies pressed close, her strength yielding to mine, breaths sinking ragged in the cooling dusk. Heat bloomed low, a release like rain breaking drought. Tears pricking my eyes as vulnerability spilled free. No walls left. The world narrowed to her, pulse thudding against my chest, the give of her under my touch, desire met without fear. We pulled back, foreheads touching, the quiet landscape holding our truth. Hope closed on that shared path, steps resuming down the trail, hands linked against the gathering dark. No easy forever, but the pull anchored us, resilient as ridge roots. The story settles, but the pull lingers. Our hands intertwined on the ridge's edge, fingers locked against the fading light. A quiet claim in the vast quiet. In hidden desires and small-town stakes, we found connection worth the risk. If you've felt this pull in your own life, share your story below. Subscribe for more tales of hearts stolen and held.